ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say hello and welcome. Welcome to a fresh, brand new edition of the program, ASHFORD GARLEY Live, on this beautiful Monday night. Today is January the 11th, 2021, and it feels great to be back home. A word of introduction, as always, this is the brother who doesn't eat iron, but he's definitely stronger than a lion. Enjoy the time, the medicine of the microphone, the golden voice of Liberia. ASHFORD the Giant, and now you know me, Garley. Welcome. And just like that, I have my cool palette. The name is VOLCANO SHELTON, the most eruptible. SHELTON, my man. How was the weekend? First off, hello and welcome to the show.
Well, the weekend was great. I stayed indoors. Accordingly, it kind of got a little sunny on yesterday, but I didn't go out. Just stay indoors, especially for yesterday. But overall, everything is great. I'm, happy to be back with you. You kind of disappeared on last Friday handling behind the scenes matter for Bridge Radio. So I had to go solo. I don't know what my grade is. Filling your shoes. I was trying to speak a little bit of the thing you said to about just
and that's one of the reasons why we're here. Teamwork pays a lot. When you travel alone, you go fast.
Okay.
That's what the wise man once said. But when you travel as a team, you go far away. You go farther when you travel as a team.
Good,
so
good.
For you to be able to do some other stuff, you have to make sure that you duplicate yourself. And in this case, my man, you did extremely well the other day. I won't put up a grade on it, but with you being a professional, decades under your belt in terms of professional broadcasting, I was not surprised at all.
Thank you. And do you see something too? The microphones?
you have a new mic. I see the silver mic. You want to explain that?
Yeah. So you see, when you go to the Olympics, you got people who win gold, you got people who win silver, and you got people who win bronze. So since I'm the co-host, I couldn't go get gold mic, and I can be the host. So I decided to go silver, so you can show the distinction between the host and the co-host. So I'm using a silver mic as similar as that of yours, but it's just that the color is silver and yours is gold.
You are just a true Capricorn, and keep being humble, and I love it, and I love it, Shelton. That's a good thing. So, what we hope to expect tonight from Mr. Jackson, as he appears tonight as our special guest.
Well, we're going to be talking about education, and it's one of the issues in Liberia, and it's been an existential issue, considering our population right now, 5 million plus. There's always been that unbalanced between the literacy and illiteracy, meaning the literate population and the illiterate population. And there's always been the same percentage given, and I'm not sure how did we arrive at that percentage, but it always comes across as 75% of the people illiterate, 75% of the people illiterate. But that was then when we were coming up in school during our time. And here we are, at the time we were about 2.5 million. Today we're about 5 million. That's half of that. So here we are, fast forward all the way in 2021. But we have all these learning institutions popping up from everywhere in the country. From universities, some are providing online degrees when you barely can afford data, you understand, and the inconsistency of technology regarding data and all of that, and people are going and getting online degrees, elementary schools, high schools, and most of these schools are owned by people who are private citizens. So how are they opening these schools? What are the yardsticks? What are the mechanisms put in place to open your school? So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the quality of education coming out of these schools. And who better to talk about it but our studio guest tonight? So
And
Mwalimu-Koh is our studio guest, and he's going to be covering these things because he spent around the classroom for many years, and he's a veteran educator, and that's why his name Mwalimu-Koh, which is Swahili means veteran teacher, and he will be talking a lot tonight about the things we're talking about.
okay, just before we introduce him, let us do some housekeeping. Yeah, tonight, my brother Charles B. Yates, a veteran journalist as well, is watching from Monrovia, Liberia. And Shelton, uh, you talked about it behind backstage earlier. We want to be able to engage our folks. So why don't you run down the schedule going forward? Just before you do that, next Monday, we will have a special guest, Mr. George G. Solo. George Solo has expressed his interest in running for the representative seat in Grand Julia County. He wants to occupy the seat of now Senator-elect Zoe Pendon. So George Solo will be our guest next Monday, same time, same place on British Radio Africa. Go ahead, Shelton.
So yeah, we came on last Monday and we had an interruption, but we talked about having a permanent schedule now for 8 o'clock, to give our you know Eastern time listeners and viewers the opportunity to be home, relax, and be able to watch the program, grab the popcorn like you always say, and get something to drink and invite a friend. So we're gonna be going on air Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and which will be about 1 o'clock GMT, meaning in Africa, Liberia, those countries under the uh, Greenwich Mean Time Belt. If we have to broadcast anything outside of our broadcast schedule of Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 p.m., then we will send our promo out to say that we're coming out with something, on Thursday or Friday or Saturday or Sunday. The second thing to that is that as Bridge Radio continue to evolve, we're trying now to come in with other programs, and I should be coming on sooner than later with a production. So I'm still brainstorming around. I got to do the program proposal, work it out, and figure what I want to do. So then turn it to the management of Bridge Radio to determine whether it's feasible, and then we can do something outside of just the Ashford Garley Live, because Ashford Garley Live is just one of these shows on Bridge Radio Africa. We intend to do a lot more. So that's just about a gist of things that are coming 2021.
And it kind of makes sense because and besides the Africa Live that you said, if you are out there and you're interested in being a part of Bridge Radio, you have a program idea, shoot us a proposal, check this out, and of course you can be part of the platform. This platform is for all of you out there, and we're here to give you a professional piece of work. So as long as you have it down packed and you want to form part of the team, hey, feel free to contact us. Go ahead, Shadow.
Yeah, so that's about it. And then don't forget the membership drive. We continue to reemphasize it because it's important for sustainability. Now that we're trying to go outside of the normal routine of just the Ashford Garden Live show, we can also put in some of these new production and programs that would be necessary for the continuation of Bridge Radio Africa. So the $10 a month, we've asked you, our very devoted listeners and viewers, to contribute $10 a month. If you want to do a one-time payment of 120, that helps with sustaining the platform, behind the scenes stuff, taking care of our affiliates on the grounds, meaning in Liberia. All of those things will help to take this platform to another level. So we want to encourage you. And it doesn't mean because we say $10. If you want to do more, we encourage your generosity. There are other things we're also asking for. If you saw something that you thought is a piece of equipment you want to purchase for us and say, listen, I saw this, give me specifications of some of the stuff you guys need, we can send that, and if you want to buy it as a one-time gift to us, we'll appreciate it. So it's all about your support. and your dedication to what we're doing. Thank you.
And, and again, we are serious about this because in the coming weeks, uh, to a month, I will be extremely busy. There will be times where you won't see me live, but you will see more of Volcano because we are doing some behind the scenes stuff. You know, God has blessed this platform, and bigger things are beginning to happen for British Radio Africa. So I will be a lot more very busy behind the scene on the managerial level, and then Shelton will in fact continue to do what he has to do as we plan for bigger and better things because we're trying to take media to the next level as it relates to Liberia, as it relates to Mana River, the ECOWAS region, and of course Africa at large. So there are bigger and better things coming from British Radio Africa. You got to stay tuned. I'm telling you. I mean, you are going to be so amazed.
Yeah, so I think with any further ado, we need to bring in our guest and start this very important conversation. I think it's going to be a great one tonight. We encourage our listeners to be professional, our viewers to be professional. Sometimes it's not about what you feel, it's about the Liberian people. And the topic here tonight will be about the Liberian people.
Okay, let's do it. You have his profile then.
Oh yeah, so before we bring it on, let me just talk a little bit about keynote in studio guest. His name is Mwalimu-Koh Moses Blonkanjay Jackson. He holds a Master of Education and a Master of Science in Education and a Master of Education. Um, he's done some serious work as engagements. He's founder and CEO of the Diversified Educators Empowerment Project, Monrovia, Liberia. He also served as proprietor of Jackson and Sons Perfect Dry Cleaning and Laundry in Painesville, contractor and market research analyst of the Liberia Telecommunications Authority. So here's his brief profile. He was born in Nigba, Riverside County, born actually in Soninwe, but he hails from Nigba, Riverside County. He was born in Soninwe in Monrovia and grew up in Riverside across the majestic Sesto Rivers, where he completed his traditional and Western primary school education. Um, so he also grew up in the Jalatan era, and he understands that whole community, including Basel community. So that's a man from that area, the maternity center, the Jalatan behind the university, all in that era. But Mr. Mwalimu Koh Jackson holds a Master of Education degree from Harvard Graduate School of Education, and a Master of Science in Mathematics Education from St. Joseph's University. And St. Joseph University actually is here in Pennsylvania. It's right outside of Philadelphia. And Harvard, we all know, is in Massachusetts. And he also is a fellow, mathematics fellow of Yale University and the University of Pennsylvania Physics Fellow, respectively. Mr. Jackson holds a Bachelor of Science degree also in mathematics and economics from the University of Liberia. So to span around his experience, he's done he's served as development specialist, an educational engineer, and a business entrepreneur versed in developing economic empowerment designs and diagnosing, troubleshooting, and effecting remedial interventions for educational and developmental situations. He has served international development agencies as the government of Liberia, the local NGOs as researcher and policy consultant. His experience dates as far back as the years of 1982 to 2020. We're talking 37 years when he began his sojourn as a classroom teacher to educational engineer, development specialist, and business entrepreneur. As lead consultant at Deep, Mr. Jackson has accomplished several tax and international partners, including but not limited to USAID, RTI, UNESCO, UNFPA, Oxfam, EPA, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and the Ministry of Education. In addition to serving the Ministry of Education as World Bank GPE School Grant Coordinator, Mr. Jackson served as Assistant Minister for Teacher Education with distinction for 2 years. So instead of going all through this, let's just bring on Mr. Jackson because he has so much to talk to us about, and his experience going to, come through the discussion tonight.
Mr. Jackson, hello, and welcome to Bridge Radio Africa.
Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm pleased to be here.
Mr. Jackson, are you surprised that you were sitting with Volcano SHELTON and ASHFORD GARLEY?
Um, for Kendall Shelton, I am, but ASHFORD GARLEY, we go way back, way back. So I'm not surprised. ASHFORD, I've known him from many years, and the way he has come, I'm not surprised. I always had an inclination that he will become who he is today. So for you, I'm not surprised.
Why so?
Because the potential you had when you were a young guy, you used to be so fascinated with big words, contemporaneously, consanguineously. Those are the words you used to ask people, how do I spell this? How do I pronounce it? So when I saw you as a prolific radio broadcast personnel, I said, that's him. That's the way I knew he was going. So I'm really not surprised. And I commend you for that.
Okay, let us just jump into this. Here we are faced with the proliferation of educational institutions in the country. Have they met the standards? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? Uh, Students coming out of higher institutions still have challenges defending their credentials. And in this day and age, you been consulting many years ago, uh, assistant minister at a certain point in time by the Ministry of Education, and a lecturer at the University of Liberia. Now, walk us through with the consultancy. Tell us about, give us some testimonials when you served as consultant in Liberia as it relates to education.
Okay, thank you. When I returned from the States after my studies, I got a job with the World Bank GPE project. And so I was in charge of the school grant program at the Ministry of Education. There was no office known as School Grant Coordination Office. Instead, money had been dished out to people to take them to the schools in the rural areas, in the suburban areas. And there is a story that a whole Ghana must go bag of money. The rain soaked it and it was thrown away. That was a lie, you know. And so when I took over, I established the school grant office. And the way I managed it, I was spotted to join the team of education administrators as deputy minister for education. But then, by the time it came from the president, it was changed to assistant minister. But because I wanted to serve, I served as assistant minister. But when you talk about the consultancies, many of the consultancy work I did was when I left the ministry. You know, during President Ellen's time, she would appoint a minister and tell him or her to bring his or her own people. And so when Emunia Tape was removed and George Warner came in, he brought in those he trusted. He didn't look at instructional memory. He didn't look at resumes of people. So we all were wiped out. Wiped out. But knowing the kind of person I am and the kind of education I have, I established the Diversified Educators Empowerment Project, where I began to train teachers. I began to do consultancy work for international NGOs, like you've already read, for UNESCO, for UNFPA, for Oxfam. They will call on me just by one production. I was part of the international development sector. They will always call on me. Where people were writing applications, I only received a phone call, and I went there. People were making insinuations that it is because I'm from Harvard and Yale. No, that's the other advantage. But my output, you could come from a renowned school and not be able to represent what you say you are. And so after few productions, I became part of the work I'm doing now. Before I could come to this studio, I received a call from Brussels that they want me to join a team of consultants. So that is the kind of work I've been doing when you talk about the consultancy. I want to also go quickly to the education issues.
So I just wanted to come in quick. Sorry,
hold on, Sheldon. Just before we go there, and before Sheldon come in, where you said the word consultancy quite a few times, and you did consult on the leadership of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And it was the same Ellen Johnson Sirleaf who said the educational system in Liberia was a complete mess. How much did you do to curtail the mess that will form within the educational system in Liberia? People are still suffering. But yet, now you serve as assistant minister, you consulted several years, and our children are still suffering.
Yeah. Okay. When I took over the Bureau of Teacher Education, I realized that there were 3 teacher training institutes, Kakata, Webo, and Zozo. In the hands of those institutes were not educators. They didn't have a GIN qualification in education. They didn't have the minimum of a C certificate, but they were educators and they were running a whole system training teachers. And when their tenure expired, I asked them to reapply with other people, and they were removed because they were brought in because they had relationships with those who were in power. That's the problem we have in Liberia here, where we put square pegs in round posts. And so I changed that aspect. The second thing I did, I revised the teacher training curriculum to make it more content knowledge prone than the pedagogical knowledge, because it was a primary teacher training institute. And so primary teachers are self-contained. And so if you're self-contained, you're going to teach the math, the general science, the history, and what have you. And so the curriculum there was everything was watered down, and the students were not performing. So we revised the curriculum to contain 65% of content, and the balance 35 was pedagogy, teacher training, classroom management, assessment, what have you. That is the second thing that I did. And I trained people. There were people in the Bureau of Teacher Education who could not even tell you what the education law was saying to them. They had a TOR that they didn't even know what was going on. And so what I did, I had every Tuesday as a training session of professional development, and I went around the country training. Those are just few of the things I did. If I've answered your question, those are just few of the things I've done.
Sure.
Did you see any impact from your job you were doing regarding the consultancy? You talked about training teachers. Now, my question is going to be quick, 3-4. That's the first question. Did you see any impact? The second question, quick, is when you talked about the school grant, which category of schools benefited from the school grants? And then my last question would be quick. I heard going to Liberia back and forth, that there was a disparity in the pay system, that during the early time, public school teachers were making even more money than the private school teachers. And so it was attracting more good teachers to the public school. And hopefully those teachers who were coming were providing the right kind of education for the students. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, okay. When we speak about impact, the 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 teacher trainees that have passed through my organization, they are spread all over the place. And in education, the way we measure impact is when students perform. So, for instance, if you had a high school running and you sent like 200 students to do your WAS, and 150 or 170 came out, you say that, oh, we have made impact. Our our impartation of knowledge may impact. Okay. So one of the things that I saw in the ministry that I tried to change, and it has not made impact, okay, was the absence of a deployment plan and the wastage in education spending. You know, this is why I say people should go to school and do education before they are allowed to manage education. Education wastage. Now you have 3 teacher training institutes. The students are there. It's a boarding school. They stay there for 10 months. They have breakfast, dinner, and lunch. You are providing all of that. And when they graduate, there is no deployment plan. You tell them, go and find their own jobs. If the man goes, he doesn't find a teaching job, all of the money that you spent goes in vain. There currently, as I speak to you, there is no deployment plan. So the TDRs did not make impact or as expected. Now the school grant was awarded rather only to elementary schools, because in the past, probably it is still existing. In the past, if a teacher who was in, or like River says, was in a school and a storm came and took out one or two zincs, he had to come to the Ministry of Education in Liberia to get money before that can be done. It's a public school. No one's going to do it for him. If a lock or a door is broken, the ministry has to go through procurement. And so the school grant was an intent to place money in the hands of the principals and the teachers so that they could do little things. And we rolled it out. It was 7 million. But guess what? The 7 million, after I rolled out 2 million, then I was I was removed or elevated to the position of assistant minister. I actually wanted to stay to ensure that the whole sum was rolled out. But when I left, I started hearing there were discrepancies. People were not doing the right
Money
thing.
somebody pocket.
Yeah, and the reason is people are not educators and they want to manage education. And you talk about disparity in pay. It will surprise you that the Minister of Education, the current one, will say to parents that, look, if you are in a school and the school fee is high, go to the school that you can afford. I take serious exception. There should be standards. If you have a school and you are charging this amount, you must have library, you must have laboratory, you must have X, Y, Z. And the education law has all of those things spelled out from A to F. The education law spells out everything. If people were going by the law, we will have a fine education system. But they'll say, look, any school can charge 10,000, the other one charges 50,000, the other one is doing uniform. And the discrepancy is so huge. And because of the discrepancy in the tuition, that is why we have discrepancies in the payment of the teachers. So the teachers, they are at the disposal of the school owners. If the man offers you 5,000 per month, you have no choice. That is why teachers moonlight. Moonlighting is when a teacher teaches at 2 to 3 schools. He runs from this school and the other school, and there's no student engagement. When I was teaching in the States, I had a time for my students. I had a whole period. I was teaching at Austin Hill Middle School, and I taught Overbrook High School in Philadelphia. You had a time to, deal with stuff. But that's not the case. But then you talk about education being a mess. The former president said education is a mess. I don't think she was looking at it from a professional lens, because she is not a teacher, she's not an education expert. So my question to her was, if you say education is a mess, what aspect of education is a mess? Is it the administration, curriculum, or the assessment? So to just say education is a mess and all of the government officials just pick it up, education is a mess. But I can tell you, all aspects of education are not messy.
You mean in Liberia?
In Liberia.
But now, Mr. Jackson, you also talked about your success in training teachers. How do you measure this success when we still have a system where students don't show up to classes, but they still make passing grades? They don't take examinations, but they still appear to graduate with credentials, and we still have problem with subject verdict agreement as you speak. How do you measure the success of training teachers? What did the teachers do?
Okay, to measure the success of training teachers in Liberia is not a 1 year activity. It cannot be. It is an age-old problem. So if I say I was successful, it means that the teachers that are trained, they are doing well. But let me tell you, in Liberia, before I even came from the States, there were 44,000 teachers. Out of the 44,000, 32,000 were not trained. They were not qualified. The education law says before any individual can stand before a group of people or students to teach, he must possess the minimum of a C certificate. 22,000 out of 44,000 were not trained, and they were in the classrooms. And the reason they were in the classroom is that administrators were putting them there. We talk about the proliferation of schools. As the schools are proliferating, the unqualified teachers has also been proliferated. For instance, let me just give you a simple example. We have a church, and I'm not trying to be rude to the religious sector. If you have a church and the Sunday school begins to swell with students, with Sunday school students, the pastor gets up one day, the Sunday school teacher tells the pastor that, look, we can manage a school, you see all of these students, and the church becomes a school right away. The deacons, the elders, the pastor, whoever, all become teachers and registrars and what have you. And then the school starts. Now, when I go there to close down the school, public sentiment is against me. Oh, we're trying to keep the children out of the street and they're trying to close the school. And so all of those teaching in those kind of schools, they're all unqualified. There are also people working at the Ministry of Education. 30% of them own schools. And they were brought there by ministers. They're not educators. Look, if you want to work at the Ministry of Finance, you have to be an accountant. You want to work at TNMA, you have to be a nurse. But anybody, if you went to the education ministry and did a census, only 30%.
And that's conflict of interest.
And then the minister brings his brother as assistant when he leaves. He posts his brother as director over a section that is supposed to manage education. And that is wrong. That's what I said earlier. Putting square pegs in round holes. That is completely wrong. Education administration is the mess, the real mess. That's what I said. All of the aspects are not messy. I mean, people may not agree with me, but from what I have seen and experience, it is the administration education that is getting the whole place messed up. How can you remove a guy who has a BSc education from Teacher College, and you bring in a lady, a very beautiful lady who has a degree in sociology, to be district education officer? Excuse me? That's a messy part. VOLCANO. That's what I said. All aspects are not messy. There are people who are qualified. They don't get employed because they don't know people. Education is not a place where you just put people, brothers and sisters. It's a technical place. That is one of the reasons. Unqualified teachers being proliferated. The reason is people bring them in. They are not conscious. They are not patriotic. They don't respect the profession.
Hmm. And that's
Challenge.
what we're talking about, the conflict of interest piece, Ashford.
That's right.
Because how can you own schools and then you work in the Ministry of Education? You will be siphoning resources to your private school, right?
The minister owns a school.
Wow.
Mr. Sori owns a school. And there are other people who own schools. I don't have all the names here. But there are other people who own, and they feel that there's nothing wrong with it. They all own schools.
Hmm.
And those schools are top-notch schools, you know. And the other thing that is causing the problem in education, as I said, we don't only have one factor. There are several factors. For instance, we have a disharmonized curriculum. A harmonized standardized test with a disharmonized curriculum. For instance, we are taking the WAS, West Africa, Sierra Leone, Ghana, we all taking the WAS. But the WAS does not have a common curriculum. So we in Liberia will design our own curriculum. Sierra Leone design horse, and Ghana designs horse. But we have one test. And I'm saying that we should have a harmonized curriculum that generates textbooks that our students can learn. So when the WAS is coming, you see our students moving all around looking for books, looking for answers because they're not prepared. We have teachers who cannot teach. They don't have the curriculum. The students go to the WAS. What they see there is not what they have been studying. That's one thing. And it is even at the tertiary level. If you did Math 107 at Cottington, it's not going to be the same Math 107 at the UL. It's going to be quite different. Because when you go to teach, they don't give you books. They just give you a paragraph of what should be in the course content. The curriculum is not harmonized. It has to begin from the tertiary level down to the secondary and the primary. For the MOE, yeah, go ahead.
Now, Mr. Jackson, when you worked at the World Bank and the Ministry of Education, I'm pretty sure you talk about some challenges that you faced. And did the World Bank come in terms of funding to remedy those challenges?
Yes.
If so, how helpful was the grant of whatever the assistance that was given?
When I entered the ministry as a consultant, it was based on the fact that the ministry had reneged on its duty to expend $40 million, $40 million US dollars that was given to the education sector to be expended over time. And 3 years had elapsed, and that money was sitting there. That is why we were employed to move the money up, because the money was about to go to Ethiopia. Can you imagine 40 million for education? And people do not have programs. So we had to go there to do the program. That the World Bank, the GP has always helped Liberia. Currently, they have a huge grant that they call Getting the Best. The GP is also supporting that. Teacher training, ECE, GPE, the World Bank, has always been supporting the ministry, and I can vouch for that. That they have been doing a pretty good job. The problem is the implementation, because the ministry makes the policy, and the ministry goes to implement. There is no auxiliary for the Ministry of Education to enhance its work, to expedite its tax. For instance, you have the Ministry of Transport, right? They have transport people all in the street checking for license and what have you. You have the Ministry of Finance, you have the GAC, you have the internal audit, and you have other line ministries that have auxiliaries. But education does not have any auxiliary. It is either the minister, his deputies, and that's it. And because there are no auxiliaries, there is no adequate supervision of schools and teachers. That is another problem that we have. The absence of a technical team, the technical arm of the ministry.
Shelton.
Yeah. So Mr. Jackson,
Yeah.
this is a very serious issue here. Um, we talked about the disparity in pay. So regarding the disparity in pay, would that be a disparity in teaching output, meaning what comes out of each school? Because you talked about the Minister of Education having his own school, and you mentioned the word top notch. That tells me that there's a potential that money's resources could be channeled to his school or her school. And so those teachers will be paid very well. Fast forward to our community, our local community, our public schools, where they barely have benches, chairs to sit on. The learning environment is unconducive, and it makes it hard for learning. So, would that be disparity in the output of education, meaning who comes out of where will determine how much of what they learn? And do you see corruption as a bedrock in the Ministry of Education for some of these disparities?
Okay. Yes, there is corruption as a bedrock of all of these problems.
Are you not afraid to
Let,
say that tonight?
I'm not, because
Good.
I served as assistant minister for education before, so that's a terrain I know well.
Very well.
Let me start at the primary level, the corruption, to tell
Good.
you how bad it is. Students who are in public schools and maybe private schools, in grade schools from like grade 6 to first grade, the teachers give them assignments, and when you are returning the assignment, you have to put, they call it bread and butter. Bread and butter. If you don't put assignment, you don't put $25 in the assignment, the teacher will not accept it.
What?
That's where I'm telling you, quote me. My little daughter, when
It's
I got
called bread
to
and butter.
junior,
Bread and
yes,
butter.
yes.
That's a
When,
new
when you
one.
put
Oh,
when you
what the
put
other
50,
one? Just quick before you come in, what's the other one called the when they go to take the wire, they call it a convenient fee or the
flex,
flexibility.
flex, I'm coming there. I'm coming
Okay,
there.
good.
You talk about corruption in education, it is rampant.
Wow.
And when you put $25, when I got through with the exam, the assignment rather, my daughter said, "Daddy, you're not giving me any money." I said, "For what?" "Oh, we can do bread and butter." Excuse me, $25. And when she posts in $50, that's bread and mayonnaise.
Oh,
Yeah,
wait.
and
So, Mr. Jackson, $25 is bread and butter, 25,
yeah,
$50 bread and mayonnaise. Then after
Mayonnaise.
yeah.
that, how much now? Then I bread, that's
This is
spaghetti.
bread, mayonnaise, egg, and all that.
Oh God, eh,
I
LIV.
am, I am, I am telling you, and that's the corruption at the primary level. At the
Okay.
secondary level, they have body women. The body women are, for instance, you are a math teacher,
Hmm.
and ASHFORD is teaching physics, and I'm teaching chemistry. And the little girl in 10th grade, she's your girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
She says she doesn't know math, and so she's your girlfriend. You're giving her free grade. But if you do not know math, you can't do chemistry.
No.
And so you send her. So the girl said that if we don't have money, our brain cannot make it with good body. She gives body to the math teacher. Then she has problem in chemistry. It's obvious. The chemistry teacher, instead of helping him man girl, he takes body too. The physics teacher, the girl's so beautiful, and then she become body woman, giving her body all over the place. Even PE teachers want to take body, so she become body woman.
And this is
For the
a
boy,
nomenclature. This is the name.
exactly.
This is
I
how
will
the
give body.
wow.
If
ASHFORD,
if I
this is
if I
serious.
don't have money, I'm gonna give body.
Give body.
And yeah, and
Meaning you would
you know,
get body in exchange for sex.
exactly for
Wow.
sex. And when you know I graduated from Topman High, so I go there usually to help. From class to class, I go and I talk to them and they explain, and they will not tell you who is doing it, because if she tells you, she's finished.
Yeah.
She is
Yeah.
finished. And that's the way she wants to do it, because she has not been challenged. The teacher opens a window for the students to go through because they are unqualified teachers.
But then you see the ripple effect. You see the ripple effect. That's statutory rape. That is a whole nother layer of societal ills.
And so you are talking about disparity in the salaries. If you are teaching in a public school, the salary is linear over the whole caseload. All public school teachers know what they're making. But in the private schools where they're charging US dollars, they pay a little bit more. So there is a disparity. If you have a C certificate, you will not make the same money as the man with the BSc and the masters. So that's the legal disparity. But on the other hand, where private schools are paying more, like when your child is going to JJ Roberts, you know how much you're paying. So the teachers get more. So there is a disparity, and there's no career ladder. To say after 5 years a man becomes a master teacher like we have in the States, to do praxis 1, praxis 2. We don't have that here, my brother.
Again, Mr. Jackson, I'm going to hold you to this. You went to school in America. You taught in America. You received funding from the World Bank for Liberia. Tell us about the way you spend some of the fundings. Here we are in the 21st century. There's no electricity in the country. Maybe you can help to explain to us. Tell us about libraries in Liberia. Do we have any? If so, where are they located?
We have reading rooms in the schools. We have reading rooms in the school. There is no central
reading rooms in the school.
Yeah, in some of the schools, the top-notch schools, they have reading rooms. But
they're not libraries, it's just reading rooms.
There's no public library in the country where one can get up and go and do research and study.
There is no public library. The children, in fact, the environment is not oriented to using.
But the building or ASHFORD,
of course,
people don't want to go in the markets. You see the disparity here.
Yeah. So we don't have libraries, but every school, when you go for the information sheet, they have the library fees. There's no library. And I thought how there is a mini library leg, but students hardly go there. What are they going to read about? What are they going to read?
But Mr. Jackson, with men of impeccable credentials, how does that make you feel? I listened to a motivational speaker, and he said life change does not begin with motivation. Life change does not begin with inspiration. Life change begins with education. And not having library, it just diminishes the appetite of student learning. I mean, there's no way to do research.
Yeah, but
you consulted several years with the help of the World Bank. Don't you think having library, at least a public library, should have been one of the things on your mind, especially from the schools that you attended when you came abroad?
Yes, you are definitely correct. Okay, there should be library where you have educational institutions. There should be. But this is Africa. When the World Bank gives money, it gives money based on the program that you propose. And so the proposals which were given to the World Bank are those that were supported.
So having library was not one of the having library was not significant at the time. You just proposed something.
Well, significant, that's not my choice of words. But when I came, I met a blueprint that we were working on. As I said, when I came, they had 40 million already, so we had to drop in and help. But I can tell you, help has been coming. There is an organization called We Care. It is managing a library, we can say, but I consider it a reading room. From the orientation I had from abroad, it's another reading room. And so to say that libraries were not significant, of course, they were significant, but there was no budget For instance, the education budget, the education law says 25% of the national budget should go to education. Do you know how much is going to education? 14%. And then it was reduced recently to like 12 and 13%. Can you imagine? The law says 25. Then you had it at 14 all along. And then when we started to advocate, you brought it down. You see? But I think the ministry has been struggling and doing well. There are people in the ministry, I don't want to be remiss. There are people in the ministry who really want to see things done. But again, my own conclusion is that people who know education should manage education. That's the point.
But Mr. Jackson, just before Shelton comes in, you have a minister of education who has a school, and you have several other workers at the Ministry of Education that have schools. So when you have grants, okay, in terms of educational help, they would divert this help to their own private institution. And like you said earlier, if you can't afford to go to this institution, then go to the institution that you can afford. Who does that?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about the grants. For instance, the World Bank grants, it is a little bit difficult to shortland it to your own school. It is difficult because the World Bank is on top of it. They are doing the interviews, they are looking at the credentials. As I speak to you, I was awarded a grant of $285,000 to train 200 teachers for a year. And we did a bidding, and I won the bid, and we have trained those teachers. They are going to graduate in January by January 16th. And so there are other institutes like LEAD, they are training principals, or the other group that receive grant, they are training early childhood education teachers. And so when it comes to the grants that the World Bank gives, I don't think it is so easy. In fact, the World Bank has it has restrictions. Only organizations like mine that are in education are awarded the grants. So the people in there, they don't have any access to the grants. Maybe other grants, but not the World Bank grants. Yeah.
Shelton?
So, Mr. Jackson, there's a lot of ills here tonight, as you and I and ASHFORD were talking about corruption, not just money corruption, but we're talking about potential for statutory rapes in these schools with teachers and students. And that's a whole nother layer of what we talked about a few weeks ago. These are the things that got our educational system so polluted. But in your dossier, the book you're trying to write, you talk about future status and recommendations. What are some of the things in that book that you're contemplating putting out that will help to make a transformation to our education system? I see some bullets. You talked about Society for Professional Educators of Liberia as one of the possible revamp. Revisit the law, which established the National Teachers Association of Liberia, compliance with the education law, the National Supervision Task Force, and the Center of Excellence Accreditation. So these are some very important things that you think will make change. Could you just, give a little brief description on those things and how you think they're going to impact, our educational system?
Okay. Thank you very much. If you will observe the conversation with you, I calibrated it into two parts: the current, and three parts, actually, the future and the trend issues.
Yeah, I didn't go to the
So,
training issues. I just wanted to see.
we haven't gotten there yet. We're here. We spend a little time on the challenges,
Yeah.
the deficiencies, and what have you. And I'm glad you brought it up. And I myself I added, but what the kind of education that I would love to see,
Hmm.
because when I speak about education, or VOLCANO and ASHFORD, I speak with authority. I mean, people may think I'm boasting, but I went to Harvard. I got a master's in education. I went to Yale, St. Joe's, education. So I can't sit there and that's my profession and people railroading it, derailing it, and all that. That is why sometimes I speak up. And besides speaking up, I intervene. I assist the ministry. I have assisted the ministry on so many occasions. As I speak to you, I am a pro bono consultant to the ministry in all departments: instruction, assessment, curriculum. Every time they have a problem, they call on. Even though I talk, I tell them what is wrong. But when they have programs and issues, they call me, and someone is asking what changes I have brought to the system in the country. Okay. Now, my major philosophy is that I've said it over 5 times since we started talking. People who did education, new education, should be left the management education. That is why we are proposing the organization, the establishment of a society for professional educators of Liberia. And that organization has already consummated its article of incorporation. The launching will be held by February. SOPEL will be comprised of people who have certificates, the minimum of a C certificate in education. If you are not an educator with paper, with credentials, you can be a teacher for 10 years. You are not qualified to be in SOPEL. And then SOPEL will not be a parallel organization to the MOE, but it will be an assistance, a help, an auxiliary to the ministry to go to those places that the ministry cannot go. The ministry does not have a task force. SOPEL will be a group of people with C certificate, B, BSc, Masters, and PhD degrees. And then there needs to be a revisitation of the education law. The law that established the NTAL. You know the NTAL? It is in the pocket of the government. The NTAL, as long as the minute you become a public school teacher, money is deducted from your salary and it goes to the NTAL. NTAL receives like $5 million Liberian every month for operations. What does it do? It doesn't do anything. It goes to conventions. And so when international people come from abroad, they only know the National Teachers Association. So they deal with NTAL. But NTAL is not an educational group. It deals only with teachers, public school teachers. So that law needs to be revisited. Why is NTAL getting all that money? That law should be revisited and be changed so that it can cascade over to private school teachers as well. Comply with the education law. Okay, I'm looking at the bullet points. Okay.
Yeah.
When Dr. Otello Gonga was minister, he did an exceptional job. The Education Act of 2011. If people who took over the ministry went through the law, by the law, if they complied with the law step by step, education will be refined. There are sections in the law that say everything that should be done is right here. But they are not going by the law. They are not. They're not going by the law. How come you have somebody on the payroll? He has a payroll number employed by the CSA, and he does not have a C certificate. And the law says he must have. So that there needs to be strict compliance to the law. How can someone be a DEO when he has a degree in sociology? And a guy who has a BSc from Teachers College, he's assistant. That's not the law. There must be compliance with the law. There must also be a national supervision task force. The ministry must, long ago when we were young people, we had LNYO. I don't know whether you people, Liberian National Youth Organization. LNYO was under the Ministry of Youth. And that was a task force under the Ministry of Youth and Sports at the time. The ministry should have a national supervision task force. Now, if you are a DEO, if you were appointed a DEO, you have 30 schools or 45 schools. You have 1 month to supervise. You have 30 days in a month. You're not going to visit those schools all the time. Some schools have never seen, they have never seen a DEO for a year or two. That's how bad it is. So we are saying we don't want to criticize and not help. We are saying we have the capacity to establish all of these things in National Supervision Task Force. And someone just asked me if there is licensing in Liberia. Yes. The education law has a section that says there is a center of excellence for teacher accreditation hereby established by law. It is there. It's in the law. And there's another center for curriculum and textbook research. But they only have textbook, they only have curriculum and no textbook research. Because they don't want to write textbooks. You write a textbook, they want it from Ghana or from Europe. And so
all of them passing around seeing the professors.
Yeah. So the center for excellence should be established so that we can do credentials mining. Credentials mining. People who are in the classrooms. Let's do a mine. Let's see the credentials so we can align education sector. This is what I believe.
Well, Mr. Jackson, there's a lady here, Ms. Njikwa. She said she worked at the Ministry of Education during that Kanakaj region, and they worked in collaboration with UNICEF and trained teachers in all counties, and the results were very fruitful. Can you now say the same thing today? Besides Montserrado, tell us about the educational system in other parts of the country.
Okay.
Whether UNICEF is still helping out.
Fruitful is relative. When Dr. Kanaka was a minister, I think it was immediately after the war, and the teacher training that UNICEF and UCF were doing were emergency certificates. Emergency. You doesn't know anything about teaching. You just gave him 6 months of training. You say go in the classroom. So I said fruitful is relative because schools were not. They had to make do with what they had. So
yeah.
I cannot say she's wrong, but fruitful was relative. At the time, there was dire need. And so after the emergency period, that teacher he was supposed to go back to school to become qualified according to the law. But those emergency certificates were still there. When I entered the United States, the first thing they gave me was an emergency certificate. I taught for a year. While teaching a year, I was required to do the praxis 1. Then I got my license. My permanent certificate. Then when I did praxis 2 mathematics, then I got my license.
And somebody is asking, when did you go to Yale and Harvard? Awaji.
I graduated from Harvard in 2009. At Harvard, I was senator for the school leadership program. I was not just a student. I was a student leader at Harvard, graduate school education. I graduated from St. Joe's in 2007. I did a master's in mathematics education. I was teaching with the school district of Philadelphia, and because I was teaching in a low-income community, like you know what I'm talking about people in Liberia wouldn't know West West.
Yeah.
When you're teaching there, you have special dispensation, and then I was teaching science, math, and so the labor department was giving me extra cash, and then they gave me 60% scholarship.
I had to find a teacher.
to go to St. Joe's, and UPenn wanted to develop a curriculum that was compliant with the mindset of the African American kids. Okay, that's how I went to UPenn for a year and did physics. As a physics fellow, I designed a curriculum I was being taught at the school, and then Yale opened its own program, and I went to Yale and I did mathematics reading problems. It was not a simple math problems, but when I said one car is running 3 miles after 4 hours when we didn't meet and all of that stuff, I became a math fellow.
I'm bluffing with a reading problem now.
Yeah. So that's how it is. But the thing that encouraged me to go to Harvard was my GRE school. I had a fine GRE school. Yeah. Just to answer the person who asked.
Okay. We've gone a little over an hour now. I think we should take our
Open the
place.
line.
Yes, open up the telephone lines. And folks, if you're just joining us, this is Ashford Garley Live on British Radio Africa. Uh, Going forward, we're here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Except something dramatic happens, then you will regularly see us on Tuesdays and Thursday, or perhaps the weekend. So the number to call is 317 353 5642. If you have questions for Mr. Jackson, please begin calling now. Thank you. Shelton, as we
You
wait
know,
for call.
there's always that inquisitiveness of Liberians trying to know people credential because they don't trust what you say.
I know.
But the name, by itself, you can research, go on, Google.
Yeah.
You will find a lot on Mr. Jackson. I think he's one of those people who is very, very well learned in the area of education, and that's why he can speak with confidence. And even I ask him if he's afraid or he's not afraid, he says he's not afraid because what he wants done and seen for Liberia is the best. But Mr. Jackson, let's come back and look at some of the trending issues. In terms of those things you talked about regarding the future trend, let's look at what now causing some of these things not to happen if we were to really put our energy, our resources, our time, our talents, our money behind it. Why you think that we at this point right now, given the situation in Liberia, why wouldn't some of these things be possible?
Well, for instance, the world over, people are using technology to teach, to learn. And when the COVID-19 set in, we gave it a trial, but it was a 4G trial, very risky. First of all, I believe it should have been a hybrid trial. You have some classes face to face and have some using the internet. The students are not even savvy. Some of them, when it comes to computer issues, they don't even have data. How is he going to do his assignment? My internet is strong because I have a modem in my home. I can afford it. That's why I'm talking to you so long, and it is strong. The students don't even have lunch when they go to school. Where are they going to get money from to buy data? So the university president, out of the clear blue sky, without an assessment, said, "Oh, you should be online." For me, that was a risky venture, and I was teaching. I'm teaching at the time, and it was difficult. I had to tell everybody, wear your face mask, your nose mask, and come to class, because on the platform, no one was going there. No one was answering the questions. Nobody knew what to do. Even the professors themselves, they had workshops for them so that they could manage the Moodle program. And so those are some of the things. The technology will be an impediment to some of the things I want to do, but there is no research. Also, research in education. Now,
Okay.
after the COVID or online stuff, there needs to be research to show the efficacy, the efficiency of that process. There's no research. We're sitting here with online schooling. Who knows the impact? Nobody. If you ask me what's the impact, I won't be able to say anything to you because research has to be done. Nobody here does research. None of the universities. They don't.
Hold on thought, Mr. Jackson. I think we have a call on the line, and he or she calls from 401. The last four digits of your number 0867. Please tell us your name.
My name is Ojugu Nsage Blonkanjay.
Yeah, how are you? That's my former student.
Okay, welcome to the show, Jago. Go ahead and make your point. Mr. Jackson is listening to you.
The man was smart.
Prof.
Yeah, I'm fine. Go ahead.
If
Ojugu?
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Speak. Do not just listen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, keep talking.
Okay. Good evening, Prof.
Good evening. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I'm so happy to hear all of those progress you have made, because some of us we benefited from it. Some of us we know what you're capable of doing. Some of us our schools that I told people have been on a whole lot of strong math instructors that made some of us that we get in a tough time. So, but it's time with all of these things to go back and then for you guys to record curriculum for the education system of our country. Look at a whole lot of universities springing out, and they just have the same BSc teaching BSc, the same BSc teaching BSc, and they're giving people BSc. So Ali, who now going further, you can go and start establish a system in the country that will try to more young folk mind like you've been doing, like you did in Somalia. Because now somebody you have to get University of Press, University of this, University of that. I was like, wow. But where the teacher they coming from? It's just a same recycling the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
and yeah.
Thank you. And Mr. Johnson, just before you chime in, I'm glad that you are not part of any political establishment in the country. You are a neutral gentleman, a businessman, educator, and this is good for our country. Now, from the outside looking in, we have a president who said that he was going to make education affordable in a sense that people should go to school free of tuition, all government institutions, including the University of Liberia. And we're also told that they have online services where you can go online and do research. Now, here you are telling us that with the coming in of the pandemic, there's no means of doing research in the country. How do we reconcile this?
Okay. Let me speak to the tuition-free policy.
And I forgot, I left something out because if you have tuition free, that gives you that breathing room. So the problem that you alluded to earlier, no data, no food to eat, because if they were paying school fees, it would have been a lot more challenging. But now that the tuition are paid, they have free online services, they should be able to afford food and data to carry on their daily activities.
But actually, I just want to add quick to buttress your question. So you talked about the budget only having $14 million, right? I mean 14% rather of the budget. How is it feasible to sustain tuition-free program from ABC to college level in a 14% budget for education? Can you add that into?
Okay. Yeah. When the president of any nation speaks, that's policy. That's policy. And so I am not sure if consultations were held before that utterance was made that tuition at public universities should be free. Because you have to calculate, if you are a professional educational planner, you have to calculate how much was being accrued from tuition per semester, and government would defray that cost. Tuition free doesn't mean that no one is paying for it. In a sense, tuition free, we all pay education tax. They did not identify where the university will get the money from, because the university depended on tuition to take care of some of its operations. And so when tuition was removed, there was no plan. Who will cover the cost? Then teacher salary began to be delayed because tuition was not coming in. And so the operational funding got shut. And the way I relate to it is that it was not properly planned. They didn't bring in the proper people, the people who are out there in planning education. Well, you don't have to be an educational planner. A common planner should know that if someone pay money, you say free, there must be ways that you manage the institution. That was not done. The advisors in that aspect did not do what the tuition free. The way they got around it, they increase the other fees. They remove the tuition, but increase the other fees so that it can be like kind of commensurate with what they lost. Someone told them about that thing you're doing not correct. Then all the fees got increased. Graduation fees right now, you can buy a cow. That's what it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
and let's talk about the research. When I spoke of research, I wasn't looking at manual research work where you go on your computer and you research things and you write and you paraphrase and all of that. I'm talking about institutional research to assess the university, know its level, and see where it should go. Research findings that will be done over a period. No university here does it. The professors, the presidents, what you have, there is no research work that people will write that will come that you have a textbook or a document to come out of it. That's the kind of research I would like to see, and that's the kind of research that we are prepared to do if the opportunity avails itself.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. We want to go back to the telephone line. Then we have a 763 number. The last 4 digits of your number, 8560. Please tell us your name.
My name is Leon Banks.
Mr. Banks, welcome to the show. And go ahead and make your point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Good evening.
Yes, Leon. Yeah, good evening, Leon.
Yes, fine. I'm actually interested in the issue of teacher licensure. You know, in Liberia, like you said, that we have good laws on the books, but the issue is the implementation.
Yeah.
There is an article in the law that talks about teacher licensure, but the modality for implementing that aspect of the law seems to be lacking. So I would like you to throw more light in terms of what we should do in terms of teacher licensure. For instance, do we have a teacher licensure test in Liberia like they do in other countries? You can even have your BSc in education, but before you enter the classroom, you go and take a test and get your license to enable you to qualify as a professional teacher to enter the classroom. Is that happening in Liberia? Over to you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson. And after that question, you will come in with the closest step because we are running pretty close to closing time now. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. When it comes to teachers' licensure, we've already done some work with the ministry. As I said earlier, the ministry calls me in from time to time to help them. UCAID provided some money, like 7 years ago, for the establishment of a center of accreditation, and that money got lost somewhere, and the center was never established. Recently, last year, a staff was employed to head the whole establishment of that body, and I was invited as a member of the panel of the technical working group. And that was one of my proposals, that when people are certificated, they should be licensed. And we should have the praxis system. Yes, to answer your question, Mr. Banks, we are on course with that one. I'm part of that group, and we are working to ensure that teachers are licensed. Even if you have your certificate, even if you graduate from Teachers College, you have to take your licensure test. That's the way it is all over the world.
Thank you. Thank you. And then I will have Shelton come in, and Mr. Jackson, you can give us your closing statement. Just so you know that this is a home for you, and we learned a lot tonight. Some of the things that we didn't know prior to you coming to the show. So we'll have Shelton chime in, and then you can give us your closing statement so that we can cut this tonight. Shelton?
So yes, Mr. Jackson, Ashford rightly said that we've learned a lot. We'll think that because of the mammoth nature of this topic, we should be coming back to talk sometime in the near future. Hopefully they don't strangle you out there in Liberia, because when you're talking about the people serious, they as an expert, they have they come after you. But you're right. We've come a long way as a country for more than 170 some more years, and we're still lagging behind our neighbors. Sierra Leone itself, irrespective of this war, have stronger educational system than Liberia, and the truth is there because it's important. Uh, I don't know when we're going to make improvements, but do you see a brighter day for our educational system, with corruption being existential as the order of the day, and with the government continue, uh, you know, um, efforts to shrink the budget on education? Because in the absence of those things, maybe we will improve. But if the budget continues to be shrunk and corruption pervades the Ministry of Education and all of its affiliates, do you see any improvement?
Well, I do see a lot of potential as improvements in the sector. The way it will come about is when teachers are motivated. If you raise the status of teachers, of the teaching profession, and I mean, in closing, I just want to let you know that there are 3 types of teachers in Liberia. The first type of teachers are those who are not qualified. They have not gone to any teacher training institute, but because the brother put them in the classroom, father owns the school, so they are teachers. They don't know how to do lesson plans, classroom management, all of that. The other type of unqualified teachers are those who have degrees, but they're not teachers. You have a degree in mathematics, but you do not know how to teach mathematics. You did biology, you don't know how to teach it. That's the second
Well,
group.
no, I've been thinking I was teacher because I got
No,
degree.
no, no. You have content knowledge, but you don't have pedagogical content knowledge. Content knowledge is you know math. Pedagogical content knowledge, you know how to teach the content. And then the third group are the very small group, the qualified teachers, those who are the education. And in closing, I will continue to advocate that people who know education should be left for education. I can be a radio host. I cannot be. That's not my area. I don't know how to do it. But people take the job. They say, "Oh, I did accounting, but I don't have any jobs. So I'm going to teach." Then when I get a better job, I will leave the accounting. That's the way people look at teachers. So the status of teachers should be improved so that they can have more value if they are motivated. All of those things about corruption, what have you, teachers should be second-class citizens. The minimum a teacher should make should be like $500 minimum. That's what I think. So I want to thank you for inviting me. I am available anytime you want me to talk about it. And I am not an opposition to the ministry. I have worked with them. They've given me huge projects. I tell you, I have like 5 different consultancies with Ministry of Education. They call me in, they give me first preference. I work with them, but I have to see what is happening. So that they are my friends.
So,
have a fine relationship.
So what part of your consultancy will try to alleviate the problem of body for grade?
I don't know what you're saying, what?
Meaning sex in exchange for passing grade. What part of that would just completely eradicate that?
No, the qualified. If you bring in qualified teachers, if the students are learning, they won't want for any teachers to come to abuse them, and the teacher should to be able to teach before the students can learn. If teaching is not taking place, learning will not take place. So we have those people in the classroom that are just picking chairs, they are hustling. No teaching will take place. I don't know what will happen. So and then it must be a capital crime. If you find in America, we can't do that.
Oh no.
You can't even touch a child.
Oh.
You see, but here is watered down. It's watered down. You see, so the thing that can alleviate the sex for grade is when you take care of the teachers, and then you bring in qualified teachers, and the people who are supervising the teachers must know how to supervise. You can say a mechanic to supervise a hospital. That is not possible. It's not. So about I will keep the files. I will keep the record. No. Education is a technical
So
profession.
when you talk about taking care of the teachers, that would mean that add more to the budget of education and ask these senators and representatives to take a pay cut so that the people who are out there trying to educate our children be a lot more motivated to go to school to teach.
A lot of teachers are disgruntled. Have you heard that a teacher was assigned a car or an office with air conditioning? No.
You'd be lucky if he gets a motorbike.
All of the ministries have buses that take the staff to school. There is no MOE bus that takes any teacher anywhere. They are disgruntled. And so flexing out their anger, I mean, in a way, that's why we have all of these problems. So education needs to be polished.
So I think they are disgruntled. They will purposely create an environment where the student has no potential of even making a passing grade.
Exactly. That's what it is. The man doesn't care. He looks around, he sees the other people, they are doing well, they are being supported, and he is there, even to get his pay. The guy who teaches in Sano, he has to come all the way to Monrovia to run after his paper. You go to the classroom, our teacher going after his pay, but he has to get his pay. He can't sit there teaching and he's not getting paid. 3 months have passed. So he comes to the ministry to find out why he hasn't gotten paid. The classroom is there. From Sano here, take like 3 days. And he has to stay here for like 2 weeks. No teacher.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, just before my colleague comes in. Now, before closing, just before we take leave of you, I want you to please summarize your policy to take our educational system from the mess that we are in to the very best that we hope to see one day.
Okay. My policy, in a nutshell, there should be mechanism to ensure compliance to the education law. That's all I can say. It solves the whole problem. If you gain access to the education law, and I say again, Otello Gonga did a very good job. The education law spells out everything. But it's only 3% of that law that is being complied with. People are just doing their own thing. They're not going by the law. If we went by the education law, education, the mess will be removed to a large extent. But as it is, no one cares about the law. They are all violators. They are all lawbreakers. The law is there. They're not from the law. So my policy, if I were asked to promulgate a policy, I would say no. I will only say let people enforce compliance with the educational law.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. And we had a great time tonight. We learned a lot, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you sometime soon, as always. Okay?
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay.
Hey, lay on your end. Go catch your sleep. Go catch your sleep. You
tell you, man,
it's almost 3 o'clock.
After 2.
Yeah, going to 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good night. Shelton, what a night, man. We done a lot tonight from Mr. Jackson.
But man, all along our teacher, because I got degree. Because I got degrees. So I was saying, I go to Liberia, my man, nothing to board the part. I'll just go to the classroom and start teaching.
Go teach, but I mean,
yeah, not knowing there's a lot behind it. But you know what, Ashford, I think what we covered here tonight is very important. And I think what I draw from all of these discussions we've been having over time is the lack of implementation of the laws. We have plagiarized most of these laws common to America, but when it comes to implementation, we fail to do them. And has been the burning issues of Liberia. We just had Massa Washington here the other night, and she talked about the recommendation of the TRC, what it could have done to catapult Liberia beyond its continued stagnation and degradation. And yet, no one has decided to take any action. So, we always going to go back to the laws on the book. The lack of implementation is the reason why Liberia is compromised, because the people who come to power, they want to get around the law, they want to circumvent the law, they want to do it their way. And that starts with the president, to the legislators, to the law enforcement officer, to the very temple of justice, and all these people continue to not follow the law, the policies, the procedures that's supposed to straighten our country up. And because they're in power, we can't go anywhere with this. ASHFORD, it is a sad situation, a serious, serious issue we have in Liberia. Until law enforcement, meaning the enforcement of law, rules, regulations, policies, procedure, is being abided by everyone from the top to the bottom, Liberia will continue to remain where it's at today. That's my closing statement for you.
Well, again, Shelton, as we dive into 2021, you are going to be a lot more visible because we are working on some behind
big things.
Listen, 2021 is the year for Breeze Radio Africa. I'm telling you, we are moving, and we are moving so big. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the night, Shelton. Let's have a great time. Thank you so much.
Right on time, man. Right on time. The network, right on time.
Folks, that's all the time we have to be with you tonight. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same place. No, not tomorrow, Wednesday night. Until then, folks, please allow me to borrow the wordings of the wise man. Tough times don't last, tough people do. The height of a man is never known until he rises, because there's no second chance to make that first impression. Don't see okra and swallow bone, because you can't hide your nakedness from bathing bucket. When God bless you, don't say that medicine. When white men know you friend black man. When you see crawfish coming from underneath the water and say the crocodile here sweating, don't say that lie. Jawri pain, jise fanikon, mobobo tuo. Ure no muzo ni wonje madobo to dry, ajiru adiwapo. Boro blaye, pare koyo, boro say, dwe wen, chenzoni, be diaku, we play. Jawri, folks, the brother who doesn't eat iron, but he's definitely stronger than the lion. As for the giant, that now you know me, Garley. Have a good night.
Oh, musique guitare.
Mama, oh, double. Na montema, na monema. Mama, oh, double. Yaka kopesa mbele zeditana. Yelmato, double.